That was like a 2.
I'm not gonna give my number out to the world. I mean, what do you want me to do?
What's your OnlyFans and what's your cell phone and your date of birth? Hey y'all, what's up? So we're making progress on the Suburban, but I wanted to take a second to show y'all this. This is gonna be, we got a little bit more content happening in this video than just one truck. Also, you can see that I spayed and neutered, so I look a little different than the last time. Even got my ears lowered, so hope y'all like it. If not, well, stick your head in the mud. Look at this. We have, well, hold up. There we are. We got this old turd in here. And I don't remember what year it is. It was like 83 or something? 83 or 84. It's been sitting for a while. I guess I could just look on the door. Let's see.
8 of 82.
8 of 82. So yeah, late 82 or 83, and it's got a 302 in it. We think it's probably got a C4 in it, but it's been sitting for a while. And this is a truck that we have a really good customer that is from here in town. His name's Brandon, and he's got a Fortune Dodge that we've done a bunch of work to for him. And he called the other day and said, "Hey, would you guys be willing to look at this old Bronco for me?" So kind of cool. You don't see many of these bull-nosed Broncos anymore. I know when I was a kid, everybody and their mom had one, but they kind of getting few and far between nowadays. And this one's pretty clean. It's got a little bit of cancer and stuff, but for the most part, I think we can make something out of it. And so the story was that the truck had like some electrical issues, and it got to where I think it had brake problems or something. And he was asking if we could make it run, and he gave us a budget and trying to make this thing roadworthy-ish again, or a ranch truck at least. And we were just kind of poking around, looking at some of the typical stuff. Starter solenoid's kind of ugly, and terminals are a little bit junky. It's got some slop in the pinion bearing in the back. Needs a set of tires. But I don't know how long it's been sitting. 10, 15 years. Shows tags in 2009, so let's say they quit driving it in 2009. That is, well, it's about 15 years, 14 or 15 years anyway. That it's been sitting. So we're going to see if we can make this thing run, and we're going to try to do it without doing a whole lot of stuff, so we can see that the motor itself is good and that it turns over before we get into spending a whole bunch of money on labor to, you know, compression test it and look at all this other crap. We just want to hear the motor run and see if it knocks or whatnot. So we're going to pull the suction line off the mechanical lift pump. If it's a steel line, if it's rubber, we'll just crimp it. And I'm going to get a little bit of gas and just pour it down the carburetor and the vents here, hopefully, and fill the fuel bowl. It's not without its vacuum leaks and stuff. None of this stuff looks very good. So, yeah, we either get a giant backfire and a flame this high if it's got ignition, or it'll run and hopefully it doesn't knock. How you doing there, 12er?
Hey, did you hear breakfast was ready?
Yeah.
Do these folks know that we have a kitchen that's balling?
Yeah. They can, what's your cell phone number? I'll get them to call you and they can just come hang out.
1-800.
breakfastisready.com.
Yeah.
12er's not awake yet. His jokes aren't that good. But yeah, we're going to try to make this old turd fart, so we just figured might as well fire up the camera and show y'all, since everybody does those videos. It's like, it's been sitting 82 years, will it run?
This has been sitting for over 100.
Wow, that's amazing. I was thinking, judging by the sticker on the windshield, it's only been sitting about 15 years, but it's actually 100.
It is.
So this is probably the first vehicle Henry Ford ever built.
Yeah. Yep, the Bronco.
Dude, how's it feel to be looking at the first vehicle ever built by Henry Ford? God dang, that's some craftsmanship, dude.
Yeah, it is.
You know what I mean? Like, the fact that he's able to beat this out on an anvil with a hammer and make it look like a stamped steel piece. I mean, you know, that's just like, dang. All right, so Brian went and grabbed a lug because this one was really bad on this side. Hold on, this thing just went full dumb. 2, 3, there's the flip. All right, so we've got a new copper lug on this side. Had to just repair 1 or 2 little wires over here, capped off some of this stuff, and basically we're about ready to throw a battery in this thing, so we went and grabbed we've got an 850 cold cranking amp battery, like a 65 at like one of the 2 batteries that comes in a late model Dodge, and we're gonna set it in here and I guess see what happens. Probably check for spark, and then we're gonna push this thing outside because we don't know if it does run, if it's gonna blow any squirrel babies out or not. It's been sitting long enough. I bet something flies out the tailpipe.
I figured we were running with the coil unhooked and then get some oil pressure built.
Yeah,
too.
sweet. So he's got the coil wire pulled off.
Fuel's blocked off.
Fuel's okay. Fuel line disc. Oh yeah, crimped off down here. So no suction coming from the tank, so we don't have to worry about it pumping any more trash than it probably already has in the carburetor. And we're gonna crank it over and see if we can make some oil pressure, see if anything works or catches on fire, and then if we got spark, well, I have a little bit of gas, I'll run. All right, you grounded?
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Key on, looking for the oil pressure gauge to max out. Oh yeah, like a champ. Okay, so what that means, yeah, what that means is because the oil pressure sender is basically the more oil pressure it has, the more ground it creates. That's what makes the gauge sweep across the dash. So the more resistance, the more ground. And well, the gauge works. So theoretically, should be able to crank till I see oil pressure on the dash. Now
Yeah.
I know I've got oil pressure
Yes, sir.
of some sort. All right, so we know the sender works, so let's crank and see if we can get some oil pressure on the dash or if the starter catches on fire first. One of the two is going to happen. Yeah. Clear? Clear. Here we go. All right. I don't want to burn the starter up, so I'm going to give it a... Okay, so I think we've cranked on it so much that it's going to end up needing a starter if we keep going, and it's funny because whenever I crank on it, it looks like the oil pressure is actually under vacuum, so I think it's killing the signal to the gauge when the key is in that plunge start position. So you're going to use these here, the old handy dandies.
That's a starter?
This is a starter solenoid right here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to bite on this guy like this.
Oh, that's safe.
Yeah, no, this is really safe. Look.
Ah!
Oh. We're going to do some of that, and Steven's going to go inside, and I think we're going to be able to see the gauge. And I don't need it. It doesn't have to peg out. I just need to see that it's moving up, and then I know the oil pump works.
Okay.
Because it's cranked enough that it's, if it has one kind of oil pressure, it's fully coated.
Okay, hang on while I find the dash. All right, go. Ready. Yeah. It's very delayed, but it's definitely coming up.
I got a little...
You got a little heat in your...
Yeah, I got a little weld in there. It's all good. Everything's fine. Voltage didn't get me down or anything.
Yeah.
All right, so we're pulling the cap off because it's been sitting for a while, and these things are really good about corroding across where the rotor makes contact. So the rotor spins in a circle and hits it in the right firing order, but you can see there's some scaly nasty that's on there. So we'll grab a pocket knife real quick, scrape on those, scrape the end of this piece a little bit, and maybe the top side of where the coil wire connects to the rotor, and we're gonna push it outside, pour some gas in the hole, and see if it runs.
That look like 100 years worth of buildup?
Yeah, no, it's certainly a 1900, early teens or early 1920s.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Okay.
That plastic electronic ignition stuff's way outdated.
The more and more we dig into it, the more and more it proves that it has been sitting for well over 100 years.
Yeah, this technology, I've never even seen this kind of technology, so I'm just hoping that the spinny thing makes this other deal go to the runner part.
All right, let's find
That's
out.
where I'm at. I think these vents go to the fuel bowl. Yeah, they look like it. So I'm just gonna pour gas down into it, and we're not gonna touch a throttle or anything because I'm imagining it's gonna make a big backfire if I do. So I'm just gonna pour enough in here for maybe for it to idle for just a little bit. And then I'm gonna save just a touch so whenever he cranks it over I can just pour some gas directly into it.
There you go.
And see if it'll fire. Now I'm gonna get out of the belt pathway and okay, hold on. Gas down the hole. Hold on. Camera's dumb. Here we go. We ain't got no choke. See if it'll run. Be ready to kill it. Here we go. Damn, bruh. Hit the accelerator real quick. Again. Again. All right, now see if it'll idle. Bruh. That's gonna work. The oil pressure came up?
Yeah, higher than, like it's still up above the L, slowly coming down.
All right, sweet. So it looks like we've got a motor that, well, I'd like to hear it run a little bit longer, so might pour a little bit more gas down the hole and see if we can get this thing to run here for just a second. Let me top our cut back. All right, and we'll pour a little bit down in here. The accelerator pump's not leaking. There's another deal that's leaking underneath. Looks like maybe one of the other gaskets on the carburetor, like the base plate or underneath the...
I think it's a 4-barrel with an intake manifold.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. We need a little bitty 4-barrel on this thing.
Get rid of some of the bull junk.
That bull jive.
That bull junk like old.
All right, brother.
Deion Sanders.
Let's see. Pour a little down the hole for good luck. There we go. All right.
You ready?
Everybody clear? Here we go. Fired up. I think I flooded it pretty good, brother. Hit the throttle. No, hold it.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, let off. Yeah, it ought to run. Go ahead. Yeah. Dude, sweet. Bro.
I gave her some gas.
All right.
Oil pressure, like full throttle in here.
Oil pressure's good?
Yeah.
Well, the motor sounds great. I don't hear any valve train noise at all. I don't hear any rod stuff, no bottom end noise. Sounds like the motor's going to be just fine. We're leaking a lot of gas.
Yeah, this fuel line down at the bottom there. It looks like maybe it clamped loose.
Yeah. That whole carburetor is just a POS. Look, while he's got the light, look how much gas is out in there.
Them leather seals went bad from
Yeah, it's a steam engine.
rawhide leather.
But, God, this camera is just dumb.
Yeah, ever since we got it replaced,
We had this thing repaired because you ran it over
well,
like
they
16
sent a whole
times.
new one and it glitches. Like I don't.
Weird.
What happened?
DJI, what are you doing with your gimbal business?
Yeah.
Because it's
Why
all
for?
whack.
Why for you do us?
So now it sounds like the motor's going to be just fine, dude.
Yeah, for
honestly.
sure.
So I think we're going to work on getting an intake manifold and a different carburetor. Ignition system sounds like it's working fine, so that's going to be really straightforward. So yeah, I think we're on the hunt for some basic stuff. We're probably going to need to do a water pump. We got some brake line stuff.
Brakes, yeah, they hit the floor. So
Yeah, they're trash.
probably do a full deal there.
So intake manifold, carburetor, brakes, vacuum pump. Well, not vacuum. Brake booster. Yeah, it's not a Cummins. It doesn't have a vacuum pump.
Yeah.
The engine is the vacuum
Yeah.
pump. Master cylinder, so basic stuff like that. But yeah, anyway, time to make a material list and get after it. So y'all hang in there and let's see if we can make this thing run a whole lot better than it does now.
All right, brother.
Check this thing out. We got it all tore down, made it run, and motor sounded good. So we talked to the customer, and he was ready to pull the trigger and do a few things to it. Didn't really have the money in his budget to go fuel injected, but we did find a pretty budget-minded kit from Edelbrock that we bought from ATEC, which is basically Summit, and we ended up with a dual plane Performer aluminum intake, which is great because the factory intake, well, it's cast iron, is a 2-barrel platform only, and even though this motor is a low compression, low output motor, we're running a small 500 CFM 4-barrel on it, so this ought to work really well. A little bit more airflow, weighs less, just does a better job at making power. Look at that. Looks great. Electric choke. Nice little package. It's going to look good. Got an air cleaner as well because Edelbrocks are good about having interference issues with the air cleaner. So we just bought a whole kit from those guys to make sure this is going to go straight forward. Brian tore all this stuff down up here, and we took a look inside the motor, and well, we've got it all vacuumed out. Everything looks good. Nothing real crazy going on here. We're going to change the mechanical lift pump as well. Got a new water pump put on it. Got a new water thermostat outlet. So a lot of new pieces to go together here to make the install really simple. We test fit the intake this morning to make sure that the heads hadn't been milled so far that we had weird reveals on the intake gaskets or anything. All the holes lined up, everything looks good. So we got some new fasteners and washers we're going to put in the intake and set it on there, and we might actually hear this thing fart today. Pour a little gas down the carburetor maybe and see if we can hear it run. We've been working on brakes, cleaned up the shoes in the back, put a maxi spring kit, wheel cylinders, got rid of the old fuel tank. It was just too far gone. The sending unit was completely just rotten, so we've got a new sender for it, and stack of fuel filters and stuff in case our supply lines have trash in them. And we're trying to talk him into doing a little bit of a lift kit on it. It does have a twin traction beam front axle, so it's kind of like a twin I-beam in the way that the geometry works. So this part of the axle here pivots on that side, and this moves in like a kind of a radial arc movement, and the same on that side. And they're good for a lot of reasons. They're bad for a lot of reasons, and generally speaking, if you don't go too crazy, they perform pretty well. They've got a kind of a reputation for wearing tires and looking a little bit silly when you back into a parking spot sometimes, but they do allow for quite a bit of wheel travel. They're pretty durable, and well, it doesn't cost any money to use what we got on here. So we're seeing if we can't get a nice lift kit for it and a nice steering setup, and maybe pick this thing up a little bit where we can clear a 33-1250 without having a problem. But that's kind of up in the air right now. Our biggest focus for today is to make the motor run and idle and be happy, and then we'll move on to some of the other stuff. So got all the bases covered, I think, and we're going to move on to stabbing the intake manifold. And the reason I fired the camera up was to give you all a quick update and to show you what we're going to do about making sure that we don't have any intake manifold leaks. So on where the intake meets the block, well, there went all my bolts, but this seam right here and this seam at the back are notorious for leaking on, well, any gas engine, and we're not going to have an issue with that because we're going to peen it. We're going to do the block side and we're going to do the intake manifold side, and that's going to give us basically a tooth for the RTV to seal against it. I don't believe in using the gasket stuff, like they'll send you little rubber gaskets that like lock in or whatever, but all that, in my opinion, that stuff's junk, and they all end up leaking. Yeah, like this right here, this cork piece, this is a piece of trash. There may be some super wizards out there that have a way to make this not leak, and they're really happy and proud of themselves, but I really don't care for the way that it looks when you have the cork hanging out of the gasket and then RTV on the top and bottom. There's guys that say, well, you can activate it by doing this and that, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. I'll leave that for y'all guys to do. We use RTV because it has the ability to expand and contract without tearing. And the cork gaskets get hard over time, so hard that they're almost like porcelain. And they leak. So anyway, the peening process is where you take a tapered punch like this and you set it up here and you make marks on this piece, and those when you hit the punch down there, it kind of flours the material and it causes it to raise a little bit, and that gives you this texture across there. and we're going to do it on the front and the back of the block where it meets it, and that's going to keep the RTV from being able to blow out, and we're not going to have any oil leaks. So I'm going to set the camera up and show you what I'm talking about. I'm not going to bore you all day with it, but I'm going to show you what we did here. Okay, so you see this pattern across here? That little bit of texture right there, this is actually raised. You can feel it. It's like braille kind of when you run your finger across it. So you end up with all these differences in height and these little divots and these raised edges around it, and that's what grabs the RTV and keeps it from coming off. So anyway, we're going to do that across the front side of the block. We're going to do that across the back side of the block. And there's nothing about this that, say we had to pull the intake manifold, this doesn't hurt us. We just have to run a wire brush and get all the RTV off if we pull the intake manifold. But either way, we're going to do this intake side, block side, stab it, and we'll be right back. So intake manifold stabbed. You remember we left off, and I'm pretty bad about not making videos make sense sometimes. Well, mainly because you get caught working and it's hard to film stuff and talk. So I'm trying to bring you up to speed as best I can. We got a lot of stuff going on. It's hard to film everything, so y'all hang in there. Intake manifold's on. Remember, we peen the front and the back side. We peen the manifold and the block side. Nice bead of RTV. Intake manifold gaskets as well. I always recommend at least putting some RTV around where the coolant jackets are, mainly on older parts. That really makes the biggest difference, because you end up with porous or eroded cast iron or cylinder head side. You've got some nasty stuff there, and sometimes you can use something like copper coat, which is a they make it in a paste and they make it in a spray can, or you can use RTV. I like black RTV anywhere that you can use it that feasibly makes sense. If it works in its temperature range and stuff like that, it's not directly touching gasoline. It works really, really well. So we put a thin skim of RTV in every little spot that looked like it might need some, especially around the coolant jacket stuff, and stab the intake manifold down. We got all of our new fasteners on here from Lawson. These are Baller Mac. They make really good stuff. So it's all bolted down clean. We've got our adapter bracket put on here for a kick down, and we ended up having to make a bracket yesterday by modifying the factory throttle bracket. Brian and I were over here looking at this and was like, man, it'd be easy to just weld something to the top of the valve cover, but we all kind of decided that was pretty cheesy.
Yeah, and it only took 20 minutes.
Yeah, to make this. And I meant to fire the camera up and tell you guys, but I'll just give you a quick rundown. Basically, this bracket used to run straight, not have a bend. And so what we did is we just took a Sharpie and we basically made a line to make sure that we weren't going to bend it too far and touch the valve cover. We wanted to make sure that it planed out straight, where we're getting a nice even pull for the throttle and a nice even pull for the kickdown lever, because all that stuff's important. You don't want this rattling and touching stuff, and you don't want this pulling at a weird angle either. This little sheave has got a plastic bushing and stuff, and they really don't do well if they're in a bind. So keeping it square was important, and that was as easy as chopping this bracket, cutting a straight line across there, and scoring the inside and bending that piece over ever so gently until we got it to plane out. And then Brian said, yo, Logan, can you throw me a little triangle business in there and weld it up? So he cut a little triangle out where that used to be straight, was now an open triangle gap. Dropped a chunk in there, welded the seam up, ground it down, shot a little bit of black paint on it, and booyah, there you go. Looking good. So now we can keep our factory throttle linkage. We've got our factory throttle linkage mount for the cruise control as well. We got clearance over here on the coil. Had to bend that little P-clamp down that holds the coil to the intake manifold. Bent that over a little bit. That left ample clearance for the electric choke to clear. And then we started dealing with all the other issues, like the hard fuel line. Edelbrocks are a little bit difficult to plumb the fuel line to. In my experience, it's kind of always been that way, because the outlet is always on this back corner. It's high into the bottom side of the air cleaner lid usually, so you want to buy a specific air cleaner to fit the top of the carburetor that clears the accelerator pump, clears all the throttle linkage, and clears the fuel inlet. So we've got most of that stuff knocked out, and then we've got a decent game plan for what we're doing with the fuel. We kind of looked it over and we decided, look, let's try to kind of chase this down underneath this side of the carburetor. making sure not to touch as many things as humanly possible, because gas does boil at 160 or 165 degrees, so it doesn't take a lot of heat to make something vapor lock when you pull up at Sonic to order a cheeseburger, and then you go to fire the thing up and you got problems. So we're trying to make sure we're not touching anything best we can. So we're using P-clamp isolators, running the fuel line underneath the carburetor and around the back, going to make a nice little loop and come in, and 90% of that's going to hide under the base of the air cleaner. Now, when we ordered the air cleaner, I wasn't thinking about this big distributor, so we got a 14-inch, and it touches the distributor. Like, it just sits tight against it, and you could probably run it, but I don't want to wrinkle it in the air cleaner where the first thing you do is pop it, see this ugly little booger on the front of it. So we're going to order like a 12-inch or whatever it takes to give us ample room back here, and I wouldn't mind being able to maybe get under here and adjust the fuel mixture for lean best idle without having to pull the air cleaner off every time. So it worked out for the best to end up giving us a little bit more room and make everything feel a little bit more at home. We ended up cutting the factory supply line and installing this filter, pre-filter on this side before the lift pump. We ended up putting a new factory Ford lift pump on it, and they say that they'll run about 4.5 to 7 psi. Now, an Edelbrock doesn't like anything over about 5.5, but you never know what you're going to get out of the box. Sometimes you get a pump that makes only 3.5 psi, and it might make 5.5 at 5,000 RPM, but that's going to be perfectly fine, because at 5,000 RPM, I'm going to need that kind of fuel pressure. So hopefully we don't fire it up and it just blows fuel past the needle seat inside the carburetor, and then it starts bleeding gasoline. But that's to be determined. Worst case scenario, we'll get like a Mr. Gasket fuel pressure regulator and just choke that thing down. The numbers that are on it are basically arbitrary. They say like 1 to 6 psi, and it all depends on how much volume the pump moves. But you can kind of set that thing and find out where it quits leaking and set it just one click underneath that, wherever that number may be. So we'll address that when we get to that. For now, we're just trying to get this thing to fire up. So we've left the air conditioning stuff off, the compressors, junk, all the stuff inside. This has been sitting for a long time. We're not going to hook any of that up. It doesn't hurt us at all. Get our basic belt system routed. So we've got a water pump and a fan and a power steering pump, and an alternator. Made a little clamp over here on this side. We didn't have a big enough P-clamp, so we just cut one leg off, bolted the other side down, over squeeze that clamp, and then slid the filter in so it's in there nice and secure. It also makes it really easy for changing fuel filters over the driver's side fender well in the future. And we're to the point now where it's time to put plug wires together. Again, hopefully hear this thing fire up and run. We've got a new fuel tank sitting back here. We got new brake lines. We were going to do a lift kit. I think we're holding off on the lift kit. I think Home Dude spent a little bit more money than he wanted to, or we're right at his budget, so we're waiting on the lift kit stuff. We got a new fuel tank. Only thing I need is the sending unit that drops in for the fuel level sender and the suction line for the factory supply line. And then we'll be able to hear this thing fire up and idle, and we'll set the timing and see what it sounds like. So y'all hang in there. We are going to keep rocking and rolling on this thing. I should have an air cleaner here in just about no time. And hopefully we'll be firing this thing up, letting you hear all 35 horsepower rev in this little turd. Okay, y'all, we've come a long way on the little Bronco. Been sitting a long time. But we are basically ready to fire this thing up, huh, Brent?
Yeah.
Just got done with the oil change. Had to do a repair drain plug on it because the one that was in the bottom had all the threads pulled. But we distributor's really close to where it ought to be. We're gonna make some little fine adjustments. Got all of our wires and stuff done. We're ready. Fuel tank's in, fuel pump's on. We need to crank it over and get some fuel up to the filter and up to the carburetor. And we know that it's got ignition because it ran before. So all things should be ready to go. Don't know anything about the transmission, so we're about to learn about that guy. So we've got some gas pumping up through here, looking good. So what I'm going to look for now is to see that my accelerator pump is working up here, and I haven't had this off since we put it together, so this might go dumb. Just hang in there with me. This guy off. All right, now let's get up here and see if we can see some fuel squirting in here. Now we haven't adjusted the choke. We haven't done nothing with much of anything. So let's just see if I can get this to open. All right, guys, so I'm gonna see if the accelerator pump's working now. We've got it. Y'all be looking down in there, those two little squirters right there. Give me some throttle. Oh yeah, okay. It should run. Okay guys, so we got gas going down the hole. Have not adjusted the mixture screws or anything. We're just trying to see if it'll run, and if I can keep it running, then we'll come out here, we'll go grab a couple tools, we'll get the idle set up high where we can adjust the mixture screws for lean best idle, and then once it warms up, we'll adjust the choke and all that kind of stuff. So, are y'all ready to hear it backfire or to hear it run? Here we go.
We're ready.
Fire in the hole.
Brother, dude, way to go.
Dude, that's cool. It smells like 1983.
It totally does.
Like old nasty cat. You know? Wants to idle. It's close. Okay guys, so we've adjusted for lean best idle. So basically what lean best idle is how far can you go lean and achieve the very best idle. And so on this setup, you're going to turn the screws to the left, and that's going to actually lean it out. So what I've done is I've adjusted all the way out for the maximum RPM. This is how you do it if you don't have a vacuum gauge, you go in full wizard. So you turn out, and the leaner you get, the higher the engine will idle. Well, at a certain point, it quits doing that. And whenever you get to that point, you take the mixture screw and you turn it back in at least about an eighth. I usually go about a quarter, maybe a little bit more, because I'd rather be a little bit on the rich side and spend more time dialing it in than leave it lean and have a hard crank and all that kind of stuff. So at the same time, you want to have the minimum throttle blade opening that you can possibly get, because that's going to provide you the highest vacuum signal. You notice that we don't have any of the advance hooked up on the distributor or anything. We've set this thing at base time. I don't know if this is a full port vacuum advanced setup or not. I need to look that up because I don't know. You can set any of them up anyway, time port or full port. Doesn't matter for what we're doing right now. I have all the vacuum stuff capped off. That's the very best signal. Now I know if I go hooking up other accessories and stuff and I get a lean idle or a lean backfire, that I have a vacuum leak somewhere and I'm set too lean. So I always set it up like this. Then I start hooking up the vacuum booster. If the engine's revving high, it's delayed throttle response, and it wants to backfire, it's because the vacuum booster is drawing a massive vacuum leak. And whenever I open the throttle blades, my vacuum signal is so dramatically lost that it doesn't pull fuel at backfire. Anyway, that's where we're at. This little thing sounds like a freaking champion. I think we need to add a little bit of timing, but once you get it up on top of the carburetor, I mean, that's a happy little small block right there. Okay, so we were sitting about 2 degrees after top dead center, so we're moving in the right direction. We're sitting at about 4 degrees right now, so I need to make sure that I adjust my idle. And I'm gonna have to go back and maybe adjust my lean best idle. My target RPM is about 675. And you really wanna try to be messing with everything right around where that target RPM is, because the higher the engine is revved up, you can get a different vacuum signal, and that's gonna affect all your tuning stuff. It's about 640, but I'm about to advance the ignition timing a little bit, and it's gonna idle up a little bit more. So let's get this thing sitting up here where it needs to be. I tried to get y'all in here, but this fan is really close to everything, and it's just cash money, 8 degrees. Take it to the bank. Perfect. So we're gonna cut it off, tighten the distributor down. keep going through our tuning process. All right, first drive. I hope we don't crash. This thing needs a ring and pinion and maybe a carrier in the back.
30,000 backlash.
Oh yeah, exactly. Backlash. You measure the backlash in this thing in inches. Oh wow, this back seat. Look at this thing.
Oh yeah.
That thing might bite us.
Some of the
That
trampoline
means
back
it.
seats.
Let's see, is it? Looks kind of fun to ride on. Maybe. All right, let's go for a cruise. All right, do a little brake check. Let's see. Oh yeah, lots of brakes. Let's see if it goes. Bro, little foot pounds going on here, dude. Yeah, all right, this is just our first little drive. We got a little bump down here and go over, kind of turn around.
I love turning radius of Broncos.
Dude, this thing turns great. All right, let me turn the camera around so y'all can see what we're doing here. All right, here we go. A little bit of that. Bro. Yeah.
Sweet.
All right. All right, just had to get a little bit of action here. I haven't quite worked up the courage to drive this on the road yet. It's been sitting for a long time. But we just drove about 400 yards and it went perfect. So that's pretty good. The auto response is good. Listen to this thing. Dude, it's so dialed. That carburetor's dialed, bro.
Sweet.
Set at 8 degrees before top dead center. I've got the vacuum on, the time port vacuum right now, but I mean, it's, look, I just killed the key. Look at this. It's like this. Whew. That's so perfect.
I mean, I don't need no fuel injection, right?
No, dude. That's pretty slick. All right, well, I think that probably about sums up what we're gonna do on this thing. It's got 1,000-year-old tires on it that you can literally see the air through the sidewalls, so I don't think I'm gonna do a whole lot of road driving on it. If I happen to fire this camera back up, it'll be because I decided, screw it, we're gonna go for a drive. But I don't have insurance on it, didn't have current tags. The tires are Maypops to say the least. So I think we might be done on this video over this one, dude. Did a good job.
Nice.
Brian rock and rolled on this thing. So we did an Edelbrock intake, dual plane intake. We did a 500 CFM 4-barrel, used the factory ignition and stuff, put a fuel tank in it. We went through the brakes, some fuel filters, cleaned out the fuel lines, and I think that pretty much sums it up. We had a power cable.
Two little seals.
Yeah, pinion seal.
Pin seal, output shaft seal.
Yeah, kind of just tidied it up. Brought an old turd back to life.
Yep.
Pretty cool. Tell y'all what, go find something cool and fix it. Thank y'all for watching this episode. See y'all next time. Later.